Going live. Right, you're live. Okay. Well, apologies for everybody who's had been okay, who had been waiting. We've actually been live for a while, but the difficulty is that I don't understand YouTube properly yet, and there's a tiny video that yeah, that's being processed on my little phone at the moment, that has got the intro that the 7, 8, including me, people have given about who they are and why they're interested. And it's well worth watching because they're a mixed bunch of people with a broad range of experiences and interests. Great. Right, so I now instead going to go back to what I was trying to show you. Now, yeah, let's go to my homepage first of all. So, yeah, watch the earlier video, but a quick hello here. My name is James Kitching, running the HeMSEYE open source project, running the Make AI Happen meetup group, and there's a blog. This is my website, https://hemseye.org.wp. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff here that I've been building up about trying to figure out how to make our AI happen in the most effective and safest way. I think I've figured a way of using an obscure branch of linguistics that people in AI haven't heard of with discrete event simulation, which, again, people in AI tend not to have heard of. I've heard of them because I've spent 30 years programming in the commercial world. So I've got a breadth of experience that's not limited to one floor of a university department, which is often the experience of the academic world. So on my blog, I post a lot of stuff as well. And I posted on there about this webcast, which has got an agenda and a discussion of what we're all going to talk about and how that works. Oh, actually, because this is the blog, yeah, this is all the stuff that we talked about in the past. Anyway, yeah, so let's scroll down a bit and talk about this presentation. Now, last month, I talked to a whole bunch of PowerPoint slides and was slow about it, whereas now I'm going to try and talk to these topics, and hopefully I'll get on quicker. Right, so the idea about doing this really was about being inspired by the Homebrew Computer Club, which, if you know your history of computing, these were a bunch of engineers and hippies and generally cooperative people who, not sure which university they were at, anyway, near where Silicon Valley eventually grew up. These people were, in a sense, the spark for the growth of Silicon Valley, because there are a bunch of engineers who got together who tried to discuss the problems of how to make a decent personal computer, because prior to what they eventually produced, which was something called the Apple I, which came in a kit form and in a wooden box, but it was an Apple and it was damn good, because I've forgotten the name of Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Yeah, they were there. I think Bill Gates was there as well. You know, the biggies of the PC computer age were young people meeting up there, sharing and figuring out, and you know, they brought us the personal computer by being, you know, well, sharing their experience and meeting up and trying to figure out how the heck. Well, so I thought that's a good idea. And we could use the internet as well, and we could create the Make AI Happen social network. So we've got Meetup, if people don't know, really good website for you sign up there for free, unless you can run a meetup and put in, shamanism in Brighton or dog walking, and you'll find stuff, or artificial intelligence. There's thousands of people doing fun stuff. Create your own social life. Brilliant. So um, I thought I'd start off with that. I've been running a meetup group in Haywards Heath for a couple of years. There aren't enough people with an interest in AI. Yeah, that's polite. Whereas there are a lot more techie people in Brighton. So, got a bit more of a room full of people. Be nice to see 3 times more or more, but, early days. Um, so, uh, we've there's a reference there to the launch of the meeting that we had last month, which is me explaining about my ideas for the Hive Mind's Eye, HEMSEYE, which is what the open source project is about, which I'll talk about later, and also this obscure branch of linguistics, which is a possibility of using a model of self-awareness, the pre-verbal ability to understand the world, to acquire language. In that the self-awareness of being human is what distinguishes us from the great apes. If you study how people have compared great apes compared to us, we are able to lie and understand, the concept of what's in the mind of somebody, other person. We'll talk a bit more about that later. Anyway, why we what we need, what are the recipes, what are the ingredients needed to make a computer understand language. Anyway, so there's a bunch of links that I was going to go through back on the my blog. I'll have a quick look. Yeah, what I was thinking was I got a whole bunch of headings. Now, I wanted to talk some more about the way that the Homebrew Computer Club worked. Now, the difficulty that they had was that there were so many concepts and ideas that needed sorting that they weren't sure that, they only had limited time. So what they did was eventually they had lights, like they got the TUC conference where anyone in the group, could ask for, can I have 5 minutes, 5 minutes worth of time from the group, and they would say, I've got this engineering issue. I want to fix this. I'm looking at it in this way. So they're sharing, what they want to try and fix. And around the room with all that different experience there are people there who know more of the dots that are out there, as it were, and are then able to join the dots to the particular aspect of whatever it is of inventing a PC, which is what they did. So that's how they operated. So they allowed everyone to have their 5 minutes. So think, is there something that you want to say for 5 minutes with the group? We need to draw ideas out of each other and out of people, and have the confidence to and the politeness, to share in a safe way. So they as a group were protective of each other, of the sort of don't be bloody stupid was obviously not an acceptable way to be behaving in that group, because they wanted to value everybody. So they did really well, and after a 5 minutes on a particular topic, then the bell would go if somebody had a timer, or could whip their phone out and start timing me for 5 minutes on some topics. And we can try and go through them really quickly, and figure out, we could get through half this meeting in 5-minute chunks. Maybe on YouTube, actually, we could divide these up into chunks of little punchy bits of stuff that, this is a problem. This is what we want to work on, and then we can discuss, the agenda of, whether you spend 20 minutes, an hour, or an entire meeting discussing something more. Last month, I went in a very detailed way trying to explain, sort of my thoughts and academic journey of how I came to the idea that this pre-verbal model of self-awareness was a mechanism for language acquisition, and the fact that you could link that to a simulation of the world, because we've got an in-mind simulation of the world. We can think about the future and the view of stuff. So we needed to create a sort of a common ground of putting that human experience inside a computer and our understanding of language connected to that view, so that we could share it in sort of like on a mirror line, in effect, that we're sharing all of those skills. Because at the moment, you can put a virtual world inside a computer, but it doesn't know what it's about because it's not plumbed to, have the perspective of all the other things to make it happen. So, it was a model of putting in the extra plumbing that's missing on the internet as to why the internet isn't intelligent. It doesn't have human experience. It's not self-aware, and of course, anyway, this meeting. So that's kind of where we were going to go. I can start using my phone to do the timing of stuff, actually, as we're not doing. I'm not using this after all with my £10 worth of thing to stop Darren from last month having to hold his phone up for hours and hours and cause himself great pain. So timer, 5 minutes. I'll start that once I find a topic. And so yes, I've talked about that. Now, last meeting we talked a little bit about AI safety, which of course we're all terrified because we've all seen Terminator and been thoroughly terrified by the prospect of AI. Although, actually, I will start this. So I'm on 5 minutes on AI. Actually, no, I will stop that because I'm still introducing the idea. This is an overview of everything of what we're going to talk about. DARPA is the next topic we said that we'd talk about. Now, DARPA is the US military funding arm that is going to be looking at AI, and they've got some plans for making AI explainable, so to have AI understand stuff, and it might be PR that they're not letting on what they really are up to, but what they put out doesn't look that impressive. And I think, the HEMSEYE view of doing stuff is far better. And I'm going to email some people working on the DARPA project and say, don't you think this is a better idea? And we'll see what happens. Although, another topic, Creative Commons version of the open source license, where you can put a restriction in to say, oh, and by the way, you can't use any of this stuff for killing people or making lethal autonomous weapons, and we're going to blockchain the use of the information that we collect, because we're going to collect cause and effect data on our system, and we're going to encrypt it, and it's all going to be public. So we're not going to allow bad things to happen. I've got diverted onto another topic. Anyway, yeah, the HEMSEYE project, quick version. More about DARPA. Yeah, could HEMSEYE replace the World Wide Web? Possibility of an AIX prize. Update of what the Cabinet Office said about this as an idea, because I managed to get contact after getting invited to Google. That's cool, actually. If you run one of these groups, Google wants to know what you're up to. Or actually, I think they say that they want to encourage cooperation. Yeah, and well, it's another way of saying the same thing. Anyway, so I've twice been up there to their day that they run and met a load of really interesting people, and so that got me a contact at the Cabinet Office, and I can tell you a bit about what they said, what they thought. Right. Yeah, using social media on the internet, so that they make our AI happen as an idea. Yeah, and then I wrote some stuff down about what the possibilities were. So each of those topics, I'll try and wang through them. Some of them actually aren't that big, but I'll try and keep them really short. And then there's, I'm sure we can dive in or perhaps review, what we talked about last month, or go into it in a bit more detail, or, maybe you'll want to have your 5 minutes worth and contribute, your own experience. Right, so here goes. 5 minutes. Try 5 minutes on mission and AI ethics and safety. Right, so now the mission is for this open source project is the end result of after having thought about AI ethics and safety. So we're going to go with the mission first and then work backwards to say why this is something that answers the problems of AI. Yeah, no, actually, this is a good analogy. I think nice one. If you think about games, virtual games, World of Warcraft or whatever, they have to be ever so careful about how they introduce new features, because if they introduce a new feature and a few of the users get hold of this feature and the feature's limited, it could actually totally dominate the game, undermine the fun of everybody else who's trying to do whatever they do on World of Warcraft, and they'd lose loads of money because the whole edifice of this virtual world would collapse as the staff of AI was created, and the single staff was owned by the particular World of Warcraft user, and it would ruin everything. Well, actually, in the real world, there's a real risk that could happen. So, as a society, do we need to guard against that happening? So, yeah, I thought yes, absolutely, because you get AI falling into the likes of a competitive person, or a particularly aggressive person, or somebody who's a bit of a psychopath. A fair number of people who run big corporations, to be honest, apparently a fair number of them are psychopaths or are a bit low on empathy. And they do very well at running big companies as a result. But you give them a big enough stick of AI, is the gap between rich and poor, or poverty and people being victimized, going to be wider? It's a risk, and I think society at large is going to worry about that as a problem. So how do you solve it? Well, safety-wise, yeah, I've listed a few things. Um, it's good for AI to be open source because then as a community people can make sure that stuff isn't uh, is more fixable, can be fixed more quickly, uh, and that you should aspire to be ethical. Well, um, Google ages back decided that they would. I can't remember whether it was do no evil, do not be evil, and then they changed to do the right thing, and subsequently uh, took on a deal with the CIA for billions to improve um, image recognition technology, which sounds innocent enough, but can be applied or was planning to be applied to drones. So greater capacity for killing people at a distance more effectively, and a whole bunch of Google engineers walked out, or at least that's what it is repeatedly uh, reported on the internet. Of course, it could be fake news, but you know that's a possibility. Um, so there's one ethical side. Google have decided to pull out of that deal, apparently. So the Americans and DARPA have tried to get a whole bunch of other AI companies involved who are prepared to pay software engineers enough to potentially cause death and destruction and be capable of sleeping at night. And I wouldn't be, so I don't do that. So there's a reason for being ethical and open source. Ethical, well, I don't know, big. I've totally failed, haven't I? Right. Um, I could move on or carry on. Are people? Can I have another 5 minutes on this?
Yeah,
Stick with it. Okay. All right. Yeah, we've got some nods. Any nays? Yeah, yeah. Right. Okay. Right. So I'll try and talk quicker and not get diverted. Um, yeah. So be considerate, never evil. Attempt to save the world from AI. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, we could try and make an AI that's going to make the world a safer and happier place. Sounds very idealistic, but are these things going to be possible? Well, only probably likely if a billionaire or somebody seeing the long-term opportunity of the fact that if you had a free AI World Wide Web type open service, there would be the prospect of vast numbers of money making satellite activities all around uh, the that AI ecosystem that was safe and friendly and kind. Um, as we, the web wouldn't be the web if Tim Berners-Lee wasn't going to give it away. And I'm hoping that we'll in effect create an AI replacement for the web. But in order to do it, I believe we need to give it away free. And yeah, okay, you can make money off education and selling books and training. Um, there's also money to be made on the fact that the data behind AI is going to be very important. So whoever has the franchise to host the HEMSEYE back-end data system, you could pass that between Google and Amazon or split it between them or whatever. The people with the infrastructure and the money to have enough servers to make this sort of stuff happening. You know, there is still money for people to be made, but in order to get a pure and safe AI, safer than open, open AI, which Elon Musk was behind. If you looked at their Facebook group page about the announcements of their strategy, they actually say that they're deciding not to be as open as they were, and that they're planning to work on stuff that they, sort of, if they, the gist of it was that if they realise that there's a route to AI that is going to be quicker, that other people are working on, they will adopt that and work on it fast for a year, and then announce their new stuff, and they won't necessarily publish it. They said it was for security reasons. Well, yeah, no, the security reason for me would be they shouldn't publish their encryption key for their, but as is Linux unsafe because it's public? No, it's a darn sight safer than Microsoft. Maybe it's because people aren't out to hack Linux, perhaps not. It's the dominant platform for web servers. So, I'm not trusting OpenAI. They so much after they've quietly published this thing on their Facebook blog. They perhaps ought to rename themselves Not So Open AI. It's a bit worrying, isn't it, really? So what's the truth behind that? So you could manage AI through a network of Make AI Happen meetup groups where people are volunteering and liking to oversee code, and some people, we join it as an Apache open source foundation type thing. So, apolitical, hopefully. I think Apache are. There seems to be a good bunch of people. How do you manage it? Well, without a structure of egos taking stuff over. I haven't talked to the John Lewis Partnership. People won't know that much probably in America or around the world, but probably in the UK. Maybe they are global. Waitrose and John Lewis Partnership. They're run by the employees are partners in the business. They're part owners. They, buy into the integrity and the ethics and how the place is run. And I think. Right, I have another 5 minutes, and again, I'll carry on a bit more. We can move on to something else.
We ask a few questions.
Go on, yeah. Actually, I should have said, the other reason for doing Let's Talk for 5 minutes is because it then means that we can then talk for 2 or 3 minutes or however long, and it's a lot more productive, isn't it? Yeah, so far away.
I've got a couple of questions and a couple of points to note. First of all, even with something like open source, both the American government and the British government can usurp the open source concepts, because the American government can actually automatically take over any patents or anything they want as an American citizen. And also there's issues about transporting any code over American networks and things like that. You have to be careful of.
Right.
So there's issues there.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, no doubt that there are.
So yeah, I mean, the British government, if they've got a patent, they can take the patent off you and tell you not to keep your mouth shut if they really want to.
Right.
And you can't say anything about it or anything like that.
Does open source actually mean that?
Well, you have to patent it at some point, because that's the only way of protecting yourself. Otherwise, somebody can come in and say it's their work. So you've got all the entire issues of control in those
Yeah,
ways.
yeah. No, I mean,
I'm just saying from various legal points of view, you have to be careful.
Sure.
Somebody can just say,
Sure.
"Oh, it's part of my work," and this has happened in the past where people have taken over
Yeah.
other people's work. Well, obviously, you have to get lawyers
Yeah.
to check it out and set it up.
Yeah.
And
No.
you have to be very, very careful, because the American government at one point were trying to get certain parts of the open source outlawed, but they can do what they want anyway.
Yeah.
There are issues there.
No, I mean, I think the WikiLeaks things showed everybody that what people kind of expected and thought, and kind of in a sense hoped at some level.
Economic with the truth, I think. Or
Yeah,
economic with what
yeah,
was,
yeah. That yes, and yeah, we've had.
And the other thing is, when you're talking about AI, there's lots of different areas of AI. You have to be, some AI is going to be more important than other bits of AI. Some of it is going to be, you know, it's going to, you can ignore it. It's not going to be important.
Yeah.
And other bits of it, maybe, so you have to be a bit
Yeah.
more specific about
I
what type of AI you're talking about. Because the AI area, generically, is vast. Which bits?
yeah. No, I mean
So at some
the
point you need to nail that down a bit.
last.
That's it, yeah. So
Yeah.
you're being a bit too generic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm not. I'm just trying to bring things in a little bit.
Yeah.
tighter.
Yeah. Well, you'd have known from last month when
Yeah,
you were
I know,
here.
But nobody else.
Yeah. What I'm interested in is human-like AI rather than supercomputer.
You're talking about neural networking now.
I don't care how it's made. There'll probably be some neural networks in it. Part of the problem with neural networks that we've got is that we don't understand how to structure data well enough to pump into our neural networks. Sorry?
I'm not sure they actually understand how it actually works.
No. Well, if we get onto the DARPA stuff, that's what they say on their thing.
Yeah.
But what we talked about last month was how using discrete event simulation, you very much, because you're driving AI through a model of cause and effect and possible future outcomes. If you're mathematical, have you heard of Bayesian Networks? Yeah. So it's a graphical Bayesian network technique to do Markov chain modeling and Monte Carlo methods. But because it's graphical, then and there's a lot of infrastructure in the computer software. There's a lot less maths. Ultimately, to do some stuff, you do need still a machine learning expert for some stuff, depending on your problem. But there are hopefully generic methods that people are kicking around in that. There's something that people are confused about a fair bit, something called the free energy principle that's kicked about a lot. That's very confusing maths, which is as far I started reading a paper about it. There's a chap I invited here tonight who's written a paper about it, a review, who's at Sussex. I got no response from any of the Sussex people that I keep emailing saying, come and join us. You'll find it really interesting, but maybe they won't. I don't know, or maybe they can tell me why I'm wrong.
I just got a question about the general kind of safety. I think you're kind of like focusing on the kind of general construction, not the kind of like once it's made. So I just wanted to clarify that out loud, I guess. But are you kind of thinking more like 5 laws of AI, kind of like like if you see film iRobotics.
Yeah. I've
laws.
got a section. I've got on my frequently asked questions.
Yeah.
There's a section on that, and there's another bit. We'll cover that hopefully if we get enough 5 minutes worth. Because yes, as those wonderful films demonstrated, the 3 laws of robotics are insufficient. The thing that I think that is necessary is that you need either to contain your AI and recognize the fact that because your AI doesn't have emotional and societal
Self-aware kind of thing.
standards and self-awareness and empathy and emotions, it's actually a psychopath, and needs to be contained in a manner in which human psychopaths are contained, and or tools of equal danger would be contained. And what I mean by that is, you've got your sort of traditional Arnie Uzi 9mm submachine gun. You don't give it to a 3-year-old, and you don't give it to a psychopath, and you've got your AI tool, and you don't give it to uh, a much larger list of people. That if we as a there might be some people here who've managed to be really good liars and might perhaps cheat on their wives or husbands for years and years, and or rob banks or take drugs, but we don't know who those people are because they're good at hiding. But the people who recognise that uh, not lying and cooperating and being kind is a good way to spend time. The people who hopefully should be controlling AI. The trouble is, quite often they're not the people with the big piles of money. So, I see that as probably potentially being a major obstacle. But it might be that can you explain this stuff because it's complicated in a sufficiently clear manner, not taking 2 hours, to people to buy into it and think that it's important enough to invest in. You've got enough people chipping in a tenner, but in order to chip in a tenner, you need to be sold on the idea of thinking, well, that's worth a punt, wonderful, good. This is, the complexity of this stuff is so high, and is that ever going to be possible? Well, I'm quite sure I don't have the skills to create that sales pitch, but maybe somebody does. I don't know.
On the other hand, hardly anyone understands how their car works.
No, but somebody managed to get enough money together to make one in the first place. Whereas, yeah, I mean,
We
You
kill a lot.
can understand the benefit of a car getting from A to B. The thing with AI is you have to give a benefit, a feature and a benefit to people who don't understand the academic side of it
no,
at a higher level.
And
Yes.
cars
You have
kill
to give
200,000 people a year.
Yeah.
but
But there's the benefit. You have to, if you're going to have AI accepted on a global scale, most people
you've
will
got-
understand it and not be frightened of it.
Well-
You've got to give them a reason, a benefit for how that's going to improve their life.
It requires more
I don't think you do,
clarification.
because they're not the ones that are going to make a decision on it.
No, but they're the people that buy into it.
Who are we talking about? And not the general public.
No, but the government sit there and they have to.
People who make those decisions. Yeah.
I think the trouble
Yeah.
though with the government at the moment is that they're putting money into the Turing Institute, and I looked at the people who are working in the Turing Institute as to what their qualifications were, and, as the list of PhD supervisors, as to were there any going to understand the approach that I think is necessary. And there was a stack of people into machine learning and neural networks. Well, the bloke who invented machine learning, the Jeff Hinton, is saying, I don't think this is going anywhere and we should give up and start again. Well, the message hasn't got through. He's got he's got his own particular route that he thinks is the alternative, but he's not sure. There are so many problems with the current approach.
Say something about it kind of links into what you're saying there. The cars, the original cars were basically a replacement for horses. Horses were a lot more unpredictable and killed a lot more people, and they were a lot messier. So the cars, which was a different way of being, it's basically in this case, it's considered a different way of being a horse.
Yeah.
It was something that kind of evolved, and the car actually naturally followed on from the carriages that they built. And actually, a lot of the early motor people were actually carriage makers. So there was a natural progression. There's an evolution there.
Yeah.
They had to have a man walking in front of it with a flag.
At first, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Then
if
it changed, yeah.
if I
And then gradually.
It changed, yeah.
I've been putting on the internet saying that what I want to do is to create a self-aware AI. Well, you know, as we've all watched the Terminator film, the world became doomed pretty much when that AI system became self-aware. But we're not really too sure what that meant, or so you know, it's a story. If you watch another story about AI, there's another one called Bicentennial Man, where what's his name, Robin Williams. Yeah, lovely film. There's this robot who, you know, gets human-like intelligence abilities, becomes artistically creative, falls in love, cures human disease by creating mechanical implants, and eventually decides that he's had a wonderful life and that it's time for him to die. So he's able to die because he has made himself, I suppose, I don't quite, decomposable in some manner. Not the right word, but yeah, he's married, and his wife, who is also feeling the same way, needs to be unplugged in order to die because of all the implants that she's got that he has invented. So, you know, a wonderful love story, and an alternative to an outcome with AI. So, you know, both pure fiction.
The question of self-awareness, though, is it that you're saying that the AIs that we've got are kind of incomplete proxies of humans?
Yes.
And so you have to get the whole thing, and then
Yeah.
then you're okay.
We're going off a tangent here, and I was going to speak about this later, but it's good. You know, we're having questions. This is an explanation of business process modeling and how they do business process modeling, BPM, and using that as kind of a proxy for the a type of consciousness or self-awareness. Now, if you imagined that every object has a life cycle, and has events that it experiences throughout its world. You know, rocks are eroded over time. You know, you decide to make bread, and there are activities involved in making the bread. Now, the way that you can model this is if you thought of, you know, like a parallel dimension that was full of swimming pools, different separate swimming pools, and they've got different swim lanes in those. Yeah. Now, in one swimming pool, one process, as it were, you know, you've got all these swim lanes, and at one end, you know, there are people or whatever things doing a focused job, and you know, there they are doing the front crawl up and down. Now, you know, there's this activity going on, and the fact that you know, as a pictorial representation, because this is a mechanism of representing process, life cycle, and prediction, cause and effect. You can you know, draw a picture, lines across it, swim lanes, and the lane represents time over time. So if you thought, start off with the swimmer, you could predict that, you know, if they were doing front crawl, that at some point in the future, you know, their arm would be in, you know, right arm would be in that position, and that event would be so far along along the swim lane, and then it would happen again. But of course, you might be wrong, because they might stop for a breather and get out, or they might speed up, or they might change stroke, or they might drown. So in terms of understanding the object that is the swimmer, you're able to predict outcomes in the future based on its current behaviour. So baking bread, it comes out of the oven after a period of time. So you've within your swim lane, you can say that you've got blobs of activity, like baking, that takes, it's one thing that's happening, takes an amount of time. Now, after the baking process comes out, maybe you're doing it in batches, because this is a bit of an industrial process. You're baking 20 loaves at a time, but you've got one operator, come the end of the process, gets out his 20 loaves. Some days might discover they'd not got the mix right and had to dump the whole lot, or maybe they're having to remove one loaf from the tin at a time. So rather than it being doing a batch of 20, they're now on to a one-to-one processing process. So all of this kind of stuff is what is possible within discrete event simulation, because they've done this for an industrial process. Now, using that kind of technology of I didn't mention queues, the fact that you can have an inbound queue and an outbound queue with a certain capacity, and you can decide whether it's like one of those stack type things where you pick up the plates that go on top of each other, or that it's last in, first out, or first in, first out, whatever. So there's a way of describing the world with some software that you can do in 2 dimensions or 3 dimensions, and sort of in a sense that's what the brain does, and that's the bit that I'm interested in doing. Am I starting to answer your question then, or I've gone off at a tangent?
Right, I think, I can see the point. And, I'd also argue that there's a reason to have restricted AI that doesn't try and build a fuller picture. So where you've got AI examining scans for cancer, then the problem with humans reading that is that they're done late at night, and the doctor starts thinking about what he's having for tea, and misses artifacts.
Yeah.
And so what you don't want is an AI starting to think about, what is my meaning of life? You want it to just keep looking in a very restricted thing.
There's so many different uses of AI, and the cancer scan one, that they've done a brilliant job, in a very effective job, but the particular area of AI that I'm interested in is to make AI more human-like. I mean, Google was kicked off with the idea of having the Star Trek computer. Well, ultimately, I'd like a Star Trek computer, but I think it needs to have had its brain developed inside a robot first, because a box in the corner like the internet doesn't have human experience, doesn't have embodied experience. So in order to be able to socialize and understand a human perspective, you need to have developed an AI that has human-like experience, and a human-like vision that we can tap into and recognize, that is kind of similar, to, I mean, So I've on last, actually, I think it might be on the summary one, because I tried to cut down last month's presentation and make some more pretty looking um, topics where I had a mirror line of things that were shared that needed to, have your AI on one side and human on the other. And so there's this diagram, different colors. And so you've got the real world video, text down the bottom, virtual world simulation, imagination simulation, so the in-mind created virtual world, and the bit in between is this discrete event simulation, which I haven't actually described properly to you yet, but I'm starting to now, because the other thing, I mean, there's a department in Sussex University for trying to figure out how to model time. Well, in a computer. Well, I don't know whether they've heard about discrete event simulation, but it's a square peg in a square hole. It fits. It's really there.
We've had things like horse calculus for a long time, since the 90s for time, for discrete simulations.
Yeah.
Horse calculus.
Right. I don't know what that is, but yeah.
It's to do with time and
Right.
parallel processing and things like that.
Yeah. So, but I don't know. Maybe they're working on stuff that's way more complicated than I've ever dreamt of. So, I don't know. Be nice if I'll see if I can. It does appear to still be recording. Hopefully, I can post this at some of them and get a bit more attention, as they just ignore my emails at the moment. Anyway, yeah, I'll go and talk to them and give them a presentation on the commercial software engineers' broader, perhaps, view of the world of not knowing the detail that they know about stuff. So, I don't know. I was thinking about this in terms of what Alan Turing was able to do as an academic, and he's got the Turing Award, but there isn't the Bobby Flowers Award. Has anybody heard of him?
Oh yeah, Tommy Flowers.
Tommy Flowers. Yeah. I mean, there should be a Tommy Flowers Award, shouldn't there? Yeah.
Save millions of lives in D-Day and things like that.
Yeah. Well, you see, Alan Turing was thinking about all of these, amazing stuff, but he needed an engineer to build the machine and to know. Hang on, Alan, we can't do it that way, and we could do this, and is that going to work for you? And he had a background in it was the Strowger telephone exchange thing, which when you've ever seen it, you can see why it's so similar to the bomb thing, because it's all these mechanical parts like whirring and clicking and stuff. So he was the man with the toolbox and the knowledge to take Alan Turing's maths and make it work. I mean, Alan Turing used to make stuff himself. In that, there's a book about his life that the can't remember what it's called. The film was based on. Very interesting. I didn't finish reading it, unfortunately, but it was, really very interesting book. But engineers aren't respected enough. Since well, I don't know. I can boost my popularity with teachers since people like Michael Gove started to not appreciate the craft skills of woodworking. Now you needed to write stuff down, for God's sake. You didn't necessarily need to be so good at woodwork. If you're going to get an O level in woodwork, maybe it should be a B Tech in woodwork. I don't know. It shouldn't be academic. It's about being good at the way of making stuff. Let's respect our makers, because these are visual thinkers that we need. And the Tommy Flowers Award is something we
Yeah.
should have.
Well, Tommy Flowers, the interesting thing about Tommy Flowers is he paid for it out of his own money.
Did he?
Yeah, out of his own pocket, yeah, it was his own money.
God.
The reward he gave him was to give him his money back. And I suspect that during the war, there's a lot of people who did develop stuff out off their own back and got nothing or no reward.
Yeah, well, apparently after the war, he went back to work for the GPO.
Yeah, you did, yeah.
God, what a waste.
It's a little bit of a diversion, but we've just done something on the Enigma Machine.
Oh, right,
Are you
okay.
interested in a 5-minute?
Go, yeah, yeah.
So I was at a Financial Times event in HEMSEYE this weekend, and we ran this system.
Do you want to come and sit in front of?
So what we
Oh, okay, yeah.
what we did, you mentioned PR stunt. This was a PR stunt, fair enough. But what we did was to use AI and modern computer power to tackle the Enigma code.
Oh, right, okay.
So you can, it's easy enough to simulate the Enigma machine.
Yeah, yeah.
So we put a phrase in. We then trained a model to say what's German, what comes out is German. So we fed it Grimm's fairy tales. So we said, here's a load of German, here's a load of random. Now make up your rules, sent off the machine learning process, and then ran it, and it all seemed to be okay. But of course, it took some time to do because it's 22 billion combinations, maybe more. I'm not sure how many zeros I've got there. It could be
It's
million,
humongous,
million,
isn't it?
billion.
Yeah,
Anyway, what we did then was, because you can rent servers very cheaply, we tied up with a company called DigitalOcean in America and rented 2,000 servers and paralleled it all up onto that. Shot the thing off, and it will resolve any phrase in 13 minutes.
Oh, right.
Because it tries them all and then tests it for Germanness.
Right.
So we did this in a show. We had Simon Singh there with us, who brought an actual Enigma machine. So Simon, the author, so he explained all of that to the audience. We set this thing off running, and it gradually filled the screen up with things and started. We put a little voice synthesizer on it to start blurting out phrases that were gradually more and more German until we cracked the code.
Right. And how did all that massive computer power compare to the speed of Turing's mechanical thingy?
Yeah, well, I mean, it cost a tenner. I mean, that was one thing. You just sign up for it and off it goes. It's so simple. But yeah, I guess I don't know what the multiple over his thing. Of course, he pre-processed by guessing words that would be in the message.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Basically, Heil Hitler was by far the most commonest.
Yeah, or weather and things like that.
And the weather reports, yeah. But yeah,
Also,
there was some.
repeating something at the end with the phrase or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the big breakthroughs was they had one of the problems with with secret messages is as well as the content of the message, there's also the frequency analysis. So if you've got quiet day, 2 message, 50 messages, there's going to be a strike the day after. So to avoid that, the Germans always sent 10 messages.
Okay.
And one of the 300 character messages that they got didn't have a W in it, and they realized that pretty much the only way you could have that is by only having W's in the message, because the Enigma machine could never code a character to itself. So that was a big part of the breakthrough on the way they wrote it. It was brain power.
Yeah, yeah. I can't remember what they called it. Because I picked up on that phrase of the that you need the little bit of knowledge.
Yeah.
In order, the cipher. That's it.
Yeah.
Yes. I was regarding I'll talk about the work of Anna Bizbika, who's a Polish name, I'm sure I can't say her name properly, and Cliff Goddard, which are the people behind natural semantic meta-language and the semantic primes, which, you know, nobody in the AI world seems to have taken any interest in. But, you know, to me, as a model of self-awareness, which if you, pre-verbal self-awareness is, well, I'm getting, you know, that's another 5 minutes, you know, if we get on to that. Anyway, yeah, no, good, sorry, have you finished with your 5 minutes?
Yeah, that's,
well,
I could go on, but you don't need much.
No,
that was
no.
the story. So
Yeah,
it was
sure,
just really taking
sure.
what we've got today and
I
applying a kind of brute force attack to it.
Yeah, no, I heard a story of, you know, back in the mid-80s of when they just invented the Pentium computer, how many Pentiums that they needed in order to, they modelled fairly closely what Turing did, and you know it was ridiculous in terms of you know there were these latest tech super fast thingies, and I don't know there were about 30 of them, and to produce what they did, you know, back in the mid-80s, they needed 30 Pentiums. I mean, you know, the reaction at the time really was bloody hell. You know, what a hero was Turing and his, you know, which of course is why, you know, people have named the Turing Award after him, or at least the Americans have, which is terrific because they seldom would actually hold up somebody who wasn't American as being someone who was a good person to follow. So
also they give it for things like his incomplete.
Right.
I think they also give him it for his ideas on the incompleteness theorem and his biological systems, a lot of other things as well. It wasn't just the one-off.
No, I have. Well, I was speaking to somebody a while back. I met at a wedding. Oh, sorry, I met at a wedding, as it turned out, someone who had won the Turing Award, and you know, people who are not software engineers wouldn't understand the childlike, you know, almost, you know, excitement of jumping from toe to toe to actually think, I'm going to be able to shake hands with a Turing Award winner and talk to him. And yeah, lovely man, very interesting bloke. And I talked to him a bit about AI. He's still a professor at Stanford. And yeah, no, hopefully I'll email him in a bit and get some answers back as to whether or not, yeah, he'd not heard about semantic meta-language and so on, all these ideas I shared with him. He thought, oh yeah, it's worth looking up. So, and he works on the DARPA project, so, but hopefully he won't be involved in trying to kill people, which would be very nice, which seemed to be perhaps what it's about under the covers. I don't know. Right, okay, so moving on. Yeah, you can read that there. I was talking about business methods, wasn't I? I think that's where I left it. Can I carry on with another 5 on? Oh, and hang on, right? We would just start it. Yes, or should we move on to DARPA? What's the time now? 7:30. No, we did have the idea of ordering pizza. Is anybody hungry or wanting to order pizza? Or yeah, we could have some more free beer from Barclays or whatever. Yeah. Now there's a Domino's that's a little way down. You know, if we probably order online and or chip in Now, if you were here last month, Barclays coughed up for free food for us all. So you know, they're only supplying us with free beer now, but you know,
I think we should talk to alternative banks.
oh come on, no, this is actually no. There was a I hadn't shared this with Barclays, but NatWest sent me some info about stuff that they're trying to kick off something in Brighton, and they've created their own meetup. But yeah, I was a bit intrigued about it. But there's seemed actually a veiled sales pitch rather than actually what you know that they were in. I think they're creating a space like this. So you know, so come along and talk to us and get free money. I think what they meant by free money was a discount on the rent that you'd have to pay. You know, the nice people here, and yeah, they provide us with some good facilities. Okay, so right, I think actually, if I wonder if I click on this, does this mean that I can? Our big shared, click to control sharing. No, okay. I can't actually. Oh, hang on, live control room. Actually, there's a guy from work, a Stuart, message. The thing about the W is interesting. Yeah, no idea what he means. Anyway, then he says carry on. So, oh, yeah,
It's something about the encryption thing, spelling it with W's to make the messages say.
Oh right, okay, yeah, yeah. No, you're okay. Oh well, maybe he's still there. In terms of yeah, I put a load of stuff on Facebook over the weekend, and you know, published loads of stuff and got quite a few likes and stuff, and you know, set up this some Facebook groups, and anyway, there was a lot of promise of people getting their meetup people to sign up. Somebody from Reading and somebody from London, and people with over 2,000 members in their groups, and yeah, so they've not signed up. Anyway, never mind. My mate Stuart's watching, maybe. Good for him. Okay. So I was thinking I'd better check up, make sure that you know that there are hundreds and hundreds of people who are going to be disappointed once we bugger off and have pizza. But we can promise to get back to them, be more interesting later. Right. Okay. I suppose we can. It's Domino's, isn't it? Brighton. Domino's Pizza, St George's. Do you know which one of those is the one that's near us?
Zooming onto the map.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Second London. Yeah. If you go down, downstairs, can't you go around and round and it looks like it's downstairs and downstairs. Yeah, you'll see them on shit at the bottom. Or you just wander around for a while until you get up.
It's a very large area behind the doors.
Yeah.
Oh, that.
Go down.
Check that result.
Yeah, good time for a loo break. Yeah, that'll be it, because we are just there, aren't we? Preston Road. Okay. So fascinating ordering of pizza live on YouTube. I suppose the best thing to do is ring them up, or doesn't seem to be a link. Oh, website. Yeah, pay attention. I thought I clicked. Oh, okay. enter your postcode to begin here. Any idea what the postcode is? Okay.
Yeah.
It's a bit painful, isn't it?
Barclays, please.
Yeah,
There you go.
BN1 4QU.
Ah, BN1 4QU. Takeaway, shall we? It'll be quicker. It's only just up the road. We're sorry, but we could not match your location. Please try again. God. Just up the road, for God's sake. I think maybe we'll just ring them up. Shall we see what they've got? Log in and register. I don't want to log in and register. I just want to order a pizza. All new.
I can't let you do that.
Dave. Pizza, please give me life. I don't want. Not. Do you like pizza? Yes. Oh, for God's sake. I don't want a chatbot. Why are they making this so difficult? Message Dom. Register for easy order. Oh, for God's sake. I can't remember what my Facebook password is at the moment. No, actually, no. I need to register, not log in. God. We could always just all wander down there, really, but it's a bit cold outside, isn't it?
Just have another beer and scrap pizza.
Yeah, let's have another beer and scrap pizza. And yeah,
I'm happy with just.
yeah. Let's drink more beer and scrap pizza.
Domino's website lacks its self-awareness, really. It
Yeah.
doesn't understand how much it's
I just want to order pizza. I want a button to say various sorts of pizza and topping and maybe some garlic bread and various drinks. And I don't know, conceptually, is that hard?
I came to this not aware of food. So
Sorry?
I came to this not aware of food, so sorry.
Oh, right. Okay. No, the idea was to, yeah, that was in the.
Yeah, it's generally my income.
Yeah, I'm going to nick to the loop as well. See you in a bit, Stuart.
That certainly seems to be
That's the big one, Brighton, yeah.
definitely. No, I mean I've been doing this Python course a couple of months, so nothing crazy.
I think it's not too bad. Yeah.
Well, it's good for data science and stuff like that.
I'm doing Scala at the moment, which is kind of Scala.
Scala? Yeah. What is that?
It's kind of a functional programming language. Yeah, so it's kind of, it's sometimes it's a bit like Scala, and other times it's not. Nothing you can explain in 5 seconds.
But if you had to give like what kind of person would use Scala? What would you
It would be a data, yeah, it would be sort of a data language type
okay.
person.
You were supposed to be somewhere else at 7:30. Has it been too interesting?
I thought I'd stick around.
Ah! Right, that's good. Anyway, some people may have been in the know, but they're sort of after the experience of trying to connect to the appalling Domino's website, where you have to register to order a pizza. We thought we'd give up and drink more of Barclays refreshments, which aren't always necessarily alcoholic, but yeah, there's wine and Coke and beer. So carry on, and yeah, tea and coffee and orange juice, whatever you fancy. What kind of people?
James.
Oh, okay.
Machine after that looks complicated.
I know.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, I'll
Okay.
go.
Well, hopefully it'll all be on YouTube,
Yeah.
and you know, but yeah, actually, I'll get back to that quick peek at the control room. What's it? Stuart, yeah, beer. Yeah, is okay. You can normally get 30% Google Domino vouchers. Okay, thanks, Stuart. Anyway, he's obviously still watching. No, and he's heard our conclusion. Maybe this will get back to Domino's as well. Right. So we got 2 people who were here from last month, and I thought I could describe processing modeling and discrete event simulation in a different manner that is much faster than I did previously. And yeah, then there was the talk of doing that, talking about DARPA stuff. There's a short video about what they plan to do, and then a PDF. What we're here now until 9:30, when we'll get kicked out, or some of us might have to leave sooner. But anyway, so if you're okay with that, I'd like to finish talking about Quaker business methods and the John Lewis Partnership, and then talk about process modeling, a bit more about the idea of using swim lanes and connecting swim lanes to the Arnie virtual world view of the Terminator as he wanders around the bar looking for someone to nick a jacket off, and the little bits of phrase pop up of, whatever. in like because there's an extra layer or multiple layers of input where he's managing to integrate the video experience with his knowledge base of the world, and he's overlaying and associating that stuff, which is, I believe, what we need. And I think the discrete event simulation, business process modeling, BPMN, business process modeling notation, and background service for identifying these core basic, I think of them as blue touch paper, language understanding, what do they call them? When you start an explosion, you need a detonator. You know, we need the extra bits in the recipe. So I could see if I can convince you whether those are in fact what people have overlooked. Anyway, right. So John Lewis Partnership do a wonderful job. Lovely high-end products and all working together, now doing a fabulous rendition of Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody at the end of a what looked like a very tedious school play. You know, that's their latest video about how they work together. And, you know, obviously they've spent a great deal of money. And apparently I've heard that there are some teachers who would aspire to work that hard. Have you people seen that video as yet? Oh, I think we should play it. No? Well, it's entertaining. Does everybody like Queen? Yeah. Sorry? You don't like John? Oh, okay. Sorry. Maybe I'm asking to do this, and I was John Lewis. Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm probably spelling it wrong. Yeah. Yeah.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? Caught in a landslide, no escape from reality. Open your eyes, look up to the skies and
Actually, I'm just thinking you're here for AI rather than actually my pleasure. So anyway, whatever. We'll skip on. I think that's not a valid use of 5 minutes that you've gifted me with. So I'm going to right now. Quaker business practices, or otherwise known as the Religious Society of Friends, the way that they work is that they have a non-hierarchical management structure where they decide stuff in a community organized way. So, you know, in terms of trying to figure out how to manage AI safely and keep out the psychopaths, certainly, and the dedicated money-grabbing people or the ethical, not so ethical people, you know, the local community to do good. Right. Hello there.
Hello.
Yeah, what they do is they have someone who's appointed. So yeah. Appointed out annually. So their individual local meetings, they'd have a clerk to the preparatory meeting that would, you know, usually they have religious meetings, or so, you know, they will have management meetings or they will have business meetings, but the business meetings are a bit different, and they rather than come to a consensus, they have this person appointed to try and take the sense of the meeting, as in the feeling of the meeting. decide, what the way is forward. And people sit around in silence and speak, and then they aim to produce a minute, a written record of the decision. So it's a very open sharing of ideas, and it's a non-hierarchical way. That they came into existence as a reaction to, at the time, of I can't remember what it's called, where the sort of Catholic hierarchy were paying for the construction of St. Peter's by indulgences. Yeah, you could buy your relatives out of hell by coughing up money, or spend less time in purgatory by coughing up money. Martin Luther, inventor of Protestantism, perhaps. I don't know. Some people would say that. I think that's true. So they were trying to destroy hierarchical structures where people in a higher up position were able to potentially abuse their power over other people. So there's those preparative meetings, which are the local meetings, and then there are monthly meetings where they will pass their minutes. They can choose to pass a minute to monthly meeting, and then the monthly meeting behaves in the same way as the preparative meeting, and then there are national, this is how they work. They have used, some organisations have used those business methods in business, such as Clark's as a family, originally Lloyd's Bank, and Unilever, I believe, Cadbury's, of course. They were Quakers. So there'd been some quite successful businesses that have been run, perhaps using these business practices. I don't know whether they were always following Quaker business practices, but as a mechanism for not allowing AI to be abused, as this, staff of AI in the World of Warcraft type world that destroys everybody's game, and nobody ever has any fun anymore because someone's super powerful. That would be my suggestion.
Get their accounts closed and kicked off.
Sorry?
I think they usually get their accounts closed and kicked off. It's not in their interests.
Yeah, but the trouble is, if governments have oh, that's flashing at me for some reason. Oh, don't know. Well, no. Yeah, so that seemed like a good idea, but of course, are the people controlling the purse strings in government and the hard-nosed business people and the psychopaths running big corporations going to allow a bunch of AI people?
Yeah, it's supposed to be between 8% and 12% of people in companies are potential psychopaths.
Yes.
So it's not the other, you can't brand the other 90%.
No. I'm not saying corporations. It's just that the many of the 8% do very well at running the companies. There is a high proportion at the top, yeah, I think I'm not sure. I might have worked for some of those companies. I've currently got some very nice bosses, but I've had some truly strange and awful bosses in the past. Anyway, yeah. So that's it on. There's a whole bunch on safety, but in a sense, I've covered AI ethics and safety, perhaps, in terms of yeah, maybe you could revisit that if it's all there in terms of AI being like a knife technology. You know, it's the wielder of the knife. Oh, here's the 3 laws of robotics. Yeah, the need for respect for human rights, need for empathy, an ennobled and true sense of respectful righteousness. I don't know how you write that, but you know, that's, you know, you want in terms of someone making decisions for society. Um, uh, you know, I'd be happy if Gandhi could be resurrected and got the job, perhaps.
I mean, at the moment, you've got no way of actually encoding that in any.
No, no,
So you need an external human agency.
yes, which is why my view, rather than people talk about advanced general intelligence and super intelligence and how it runs away with itself, well, it's not going to run away with itself if it's not given the tools to run away with itself. So don't do that. And it's not going to take over the world if you don't give it the powers to take over the world.
Yeah.
And if you treat it like a psychopath because it's a weapon that if you gave it to somebody who was a psychopath or a 3-year-old, they could do a lot of damage. You know, if you contain it in that kind of perspective, then we can make safe AI in the same way as we can make safe knives that are really good for cutting up vegetables or stabbing people. But that's the human.
Or if you don't carry a knife around with you.
Isn't
Well-
the inadvertent side of it more challenging? So if all the power grid is run by AI and the AI doesn't so much go rogue, but just fails in some way, and we have no way of then
Yeah,
winding back to a more manual process, isn't that it's the growing dependency that's
Yes.
more incipient threat.
well, we've already got that dependency in a sense, in that if we had enough of a solar flare, it would actually take out the telecoms and the power transmission networks, and then there'd be a lot of very busy people, and the rest of us would be miserable for quite a
People
while.
talk to each other.
Sorry?
People don't have to be talking to each other.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
only have people walking down the street.
Yeah, yes. I don't know. It would be bad for the economy.
I think an interesting analogy for the whole thing is like we're starting to see AI take over with cars now,
Mhm.
the kind of self-driving cars and things like that.
Mhm.
And if you ever hear of a car crash with a self-driving car, it's kind of everywhere. You know, everybody hears about it.
Yeah, yeah.
But then you find out that it's someone, the actual car got T-boned. It just kind of, it was doing its normal thing, and someone sped along, and people were like, "Oh, it's unsafe, it's unsafe." But
In case you're talking about it, the person was expecting the car to stop, but obviously the AI didn't realise it was supposed to stop, and the AI was in perfect right.
Stop sign one.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and the other guy, the human being, decided to keep going, and then
I think
I-
my bit of prediction for the future of that is that as soon as you get autonomous cars appearing in any way, very quickly humans can be banned. Just really quickly, like that year.
oh,
I mean,
really?
you can't say that politically now. You
No.
can say, well, over time we'll phase it out over decades. But I think what will happen is you'll get, because of course the autonomous cars are all driving together fine because they all communicate with each other.
Yeah.
The last little thing you don't want is humans in.
I think as well that people are not understanding the nature of accidents. You know, what an AI would do wrong, because you know people would look at an AI that had an accident and be appalled at just how useless it was, as it were, because a human would never do that. But then again, if you know that's a tiny little pile on the scale on one side, because there's the enormous pile of human cock up on the other, and the fact that you know the AI cock up looks you know mindless and trivial and something that should never happen, and they've been killed. The people are needing to get their heads around and accept.
Yes.
And once they do, the fact that, you know, mad accidents happen, there'll be far fewer people killed.
Yeah, people tend to expand from very few samples. They don't really
Yeah,
understand
but
statistics.
also if you know the AI is doing something that the accident is a very non-human accident, where you think, well, you know, if a human was driving, there's no way they would have done anything so stupid. Well, okay, but all the times that the AI has saved, yeah,
Get the humans off. That's what I say.
yeah, no,
So just going back as well, like the safety thing. I mean, like the car is not self-aware. The AI in the car is not self-aware. It has no incentive to go around and start going through a marketplace or something like that, unless it's hacked or something like that.
yeah,
But like it's kind of like I think it's kind of a good analogy to kind of use as a overall thing, because we're starting to see that everywhere. And you know, as long as it's not self-aware and it doesn't have any kind of ulterior motives or any particular, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of there was this AI thing I saw a long time ago. It was a bit of a tangent, sorry. It was like if you had a robot, kind of like, you know, your Star Trek data kind of thing, and you gave him a big button that says power off, emergency power off. Like, how would you program that in? Because you can either make it so that he doesn't know about it, and then, you know, goes to do something and accidentally brushes off it and switches himself off, or you can make it very important and then he does everything in his power to stop it being pushed, like including hurting you and that kind of thing. So it's the same kind of thing. You know, it's ulterior motives and actual.
yes, yeah. I think this is something that
Yeah.
You have to be careful, but it could be accidental consciousness by saying that the robot defends itself. It stops you pressing the red button. It sounds like it's consciousness, but somebody had to
logically put it in and say,
in the first place.
it's like, do
It's
not let
like,
it happen.
it's an interesting point though, because you end up with built-in consciousness that you build in, and the one that develops, and it's very hard to tell.
And then you build in a consciousness.
Who builds it, and how do you do it, and what the rules are.
Because then you're going to get emotional and
Yeah, but you've got things like, so if you did one like that, don't press the red button. But if it built up the case knowing about other red things and buttons and off and deduced, I'd better not do it, then do you call that consequence?
That's where it becomes dangerous, if you can actually use induction to figure something like that out.
Yeah. So then, you know, there's the
The
grey line.
logical conclusion is to go insane and kill all human beings, so the red button never gets pressed.
Why don't humans have an on-off
So,
button?
So how do you build? This is what I'm saying. It's a different type of.
can you build in an expectation?
the data layer, we have the neurons and all.
Yeah.
Well, that's not
It's very slippery. It's a very slippery concept.
It's very
the darker end of it,
I think you need to have an expectation that the red button exists and that it's perfectly okay to have the red button pressed, and sort of in a sense it's like humans going to sleep.
But it's like a child, isn't it? If you don't allow it to discover that that's bad or that's wrong.
No,
you're just controlling it all the time. You're not allowing it to really have a.
No, you tell it that it's a normal part of events and it's a good thing, a good and necessary
burns
thing.
his hand on the button once.
Yeah.
That's the way humans.
That's the way it learns.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, yeah. I'm going to. Rather than talk about.
It's just that general reasoning is very, very difficult.
It's extremely hard to actually.
Well, that's
code
interesting.
it's very hard. It's very high level.
This is a bit where I posted on Facebook, and I've had a bit of interest and whatever, and you know it's a bit of an outrageous thing to say. HEMSEYE, a www replacement. So this is my, I've not explained what HEMSEYE is, but I've described this a bit now, which, if I explain this, I don't think this is the big idea. It might sound like a big idea and something that should, somebody was thought, read this the other day and thought, oh, you're heading for being published, you should be publishing this. I think this is what he was talking about, whereas actually the real penny drop thing is the modelling of self-awareness and the application of this sort of swimming pool type technology, which I'll if I'd like to talk about process modeling a bit more first, if that's okay. I seem to manage to keep everybody's interest so far. So if you manage that we've kind of tagged or connected a virtual world of like a swimming pool type representation of swimming lanes where they're not actually swimming, but they're doing, you could think of each swimming lane as being a separate room in some kind of big process of stuff happening where there's some activity going on. You can pass a message. You could throw letters over the swim lanes, to communicate if you wanted the activity in the different lane to be altered. You could be modelling different things in different lanes. So that is something that exists in business process modelling notation that can be converted into animated simulations where you can take the data about the simulation and make predictions about stuff. And that doesn't make much sense at the moment, but if I carry on talking about that in a way, that kind of framework or model of looking at the world as an existing technology. And if you think of conversation as being that as an AI agent, you'd have an intent, which meant that you were trying to do some mission or other. And in order to get that mission to be accomplished, when your mission might be to respond to conversation and nothing more, because you'd be a very safe AI if that's all your intentions were. You weren't able to generate any further intentions than that. And that, I think, is a good place to start. Your AI is safe if it sits there and it understands the world, but it's just going to answer questions. Anyway, so how's it going to answer questions? Or if it's it needs to be recognizing the fact that it's being talked to by a consciousness, and that you have a particular viewpoint, and in order for the AI's mission to be achieved, it needs to alter your viewpoint. So in a sense, its own viewpoint is in a swim lane. Your current, its model of your viewpoint is in a separate swim lane. And we've got these processes and these activities and these objects that really exist in the world and interactions going on. Now, you can to and fro between these separate swim lanes, but we've also got a model of another swim lane, of how you would like to transition the view that this person that you're talking to will eventually have. This is your objective, in a sense, in that you can, in having a conversation and deciding to express an intent, you are choosing to try and get a message across to achieve an end outcome. So you have to imagine that end outcome that's in a different swim lane, as it were. You know, you have a model of what your outcome is, of that state, yeah? And then in order to achieve that state, to transition to that state in the real world, you need to, from your own perspective, observe the current perspective of the person you're intending to communicate with, by sending them messages or resources or whatever, it's so that they will transition to this other state, which is what you want from them. Now, there's a chap who's done a lot of work on this in looking at how great apes and humans are different, and this capacity to model the perspective, the point of view of others. It's demonstrated that great apes can't do this. Of course, great apes can't talk. Well, and humans can. And if you think about it from an evolutionary perspective, you know, what does this kind of plumbing, you know, this swim lane capacity, what does that gift, you know, this capacity to do that to humans? Well, what it means is that if you've got some joint task that you want to achieve, you can be persuasive of that other person to get them to change their state, to then cooperate on some other task, to join together. Corporately, you can, as a society, choose to adopt a point of view or a behaviour, an accepted way of behaving as a society or within your own group, which you could then perpetuate potentially to a greater society. So the benefits of your family or your wider group's capacity to cooperate or take a particular view is something that descends through generations, and it's a way of evolving a society, which these are the gifts that we have compared to apes. Now, in that context, that evolutionary context, the capacity to work together in, you know, teams of two or as a family group or as a wider group, the capacity for language, that is to be able to label your own conscious experience of stuff like up and this because it's close to me, and that because it's a long way away and it's outside of arm's length, being aware that this is a potential thing that I can throw.
How does that make a difference between the bees building a nest and sacrificing their own thing for the good of the queen?
No. There, as I say, there was two sides to this. So there is the. I've been talking about the if you've got a set of words and a mechanism for modelling the world and understanding the world, you could emulate the capacities that humans have that great apes don't have by having this perspective view, this consciousness, this self-awareness. It's the self-awareness that is critical in understanding conversation, in that we, you know, it's about having an intent, and in a sense we've got a library of template words that we pull off, you know, to construct a sentence with. So we construct instances of words from our knowledge of, you know, I have this emotional intent to, in order to achieve an outcome, I decided I needed to construct a sentence. I've got my understanding of the concept of I and how I works within the English language, because I've experienced that, you know, it's I, me, verb, to act on something that I call you, and that when you talk about you mean me, and you know the when I'm being acted upon, it's me. When I am acting, it is I. And there are these verbs going on that when you talk and when I talk, we use the same verb, but when we talk about how to construct grammar and language, we're aware of how we're referring to each other, and then actually we're then of course aware of how the order in which words work together, because you know in English it's always I, the actor, the verb, and then the thing that we act upon, the object. But in other languages they do it in different orders, but that's the way that we work as English people. So consciously we understand the concept of I, you and me. We all do. It's a universal concept. You don't have to be English to know that. We've just given them the labels of that. Now these core bootstrap semantic prime, this is a long list of 65 words that are like that are about human experience. So if you can put those together into a computer model, there's an article about how someone has looked at the semantic primes and discovered that a vast number of them are actually already in formal languages that computers can understand. So that's cool. On our Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator, an extra layer of, you know, acetate, as it were, that we're labeling stuff on the world. You know, that we've got a mechanism of being able to associate those concepts, those words, with the world already. You know, because we can connect those concepts inside a computer and to the physical world. Well, that means that the list of stuff that we've got left to do of describing this within arm's length to a robot is much smaller, which is the thing that needs doing. You need to do all of those 65 words. Now, the reason you need the 65 words is along with 50 other words that are things like head and hand and more object type stuff. So 65 plus 50 and some rules upon how to relate them together, about 120 phrases. That actually is enough to paraphrase any concept. Now that's incredible. You know, as a you can create any dictionary definition from that tiny bootstrap. Now that is an amazing. You know, this is the language, the basic language of thought. So you know, to me, this is the blue touch paper, the detonator, to expand vocabulary from. Now, people in AI circle haven't recognised, you know, this opportunity. I've only found 3 articles on this research work to do with language acquisition, and they weren't done by computer scientists, who, you know, by AI people, who, you know, when the penny drops of actually thinking, hang on, if I can label a dynamic physical model of the world, a real-time model, which we're able to create real-time models of the world with, there's a technology called SLAM, simultaneous localization and mapping of identifying objects. You know, we can connect those. In effect, what we can do is we can play game shows like what's it called? Catchphrase. Yeah. So initially we're working from text to pictures. So we've got textual understanding, our 65 semantic primes, and we need to nail them down to a representation of a physical animation, a physical experience. So highly doable task. So we then got a physical representation in a virtual imagined world. Now, these then become targets for video recognition Can you have a background service that recognizes, oh, that's this opportunity, this object, because it's within arm's reach. The things that I can label as this or that or you.
But because you can define it as a language, you get you end up with just one key identifier for that.
Yes.
Identifier for everything.
Yes.
So there's actually a product there. If you end up with a universal identifier for every object.
Yes.
Based on those.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, there's a way more complexity and stuff to do, but it isn't a route that I've seen anywhere. People realizing that is an application of this linguistic technology. Anyway, so that was what I thought was the really big idea, and I've actually put up the other thing that you started reading, which is the other bit that you need, because you need two things to make the whole thing work. All right, so yeah.
Do you have a list for all of those words or those?
Oh yeah. It's on Google. Sorry, it's on Wikipedia. There's articles on my blog about it.
If it's through your blog, no problem.
Yeah, and there's a video of it from last month. Yeah, the video is about, and there are 4 of them. It's about an hour and 3/4. So this is why Darren's arms hurt. So, well done. Yeah, no, there's a links page of the with links through to. If you don't know it, there's a version of Google that's called Semantic Scholar. No, not Semantic. Is it? No, whatever. Google Scholar. Yeah. So you can become a Google Scholar, and then you join the ability to have your profile and your the references of your articles cross-referenced to everybody else, and you can list your citations. Well, this semantic prime stuff that Anna Visbika, one of her articles recently, has got over 2,000 citations. Well, you in the academic world, if you manage to get that many citations, you're almost walking on a flying carpet in terms of respect for big medals. You've super thumbs up for managing to be that well cited within the academic world. You've well, it's like you've invented your own technology, and people have been talking about it ever since. Kind of thing. You don't see that many citations on articles. Anyway, it hasn't managed to visit the AI world for some reason. I think the reason for that is that if you read the core textbooks that you get in universities, there's a few for computational linguistics that actually I've cited that in my video. They're standard texts, they're on the 3rd edition, and massive text. There's no mention of semantic primes at all. And yeah, this guy I mentioned earlier who said, well, does Chomsky know about this? He is the guy who invented something called BRAT, which is a superb tool that people use all over. It's huge, which is a mechanism by which online you can identify words and how they're used within a sentence in terms of them being verbs or particles or whatever weird names that linguists call stuff, and it puts links between them, gives them different colors, and analyzing sentences. He's quite a young chap. He's not someone who's able to have his own research team and have tenure or whatever, but he, as a someone who's collecting many references, because this is such a great, brilliant tool. he gets a lot of citations for his work. So yeah, he's a very much a statistician, computer person interested in language.
Is this what happens? I mean, with Alexa, you can get some context, can't you? You can say, who is the Prime Minister of England, and it will say Theresa May, and you can then
Yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully we'll see you again.
Yes, I'll be next
Yeah. Sure.
so it will understand a certain amount of that. Of,
Well,
who is it? And it will say Theresa May, and then you can say, how old is she? And it will then say 50.
it is extremely clever technology, but it works on statistical methods that essentially it doesn't really understand anything. It's guessing based on massive amounts of data that it's consumed and a whole bunch of rules that it's managed to construct for itself. So when well, this is why when people talk about the Turing test, you can chat to a chatbot for a bit, and then after a while, you can sideline it and realize, no, this isn't a human, because they're not responding in an appropriate fashion, because they are crunching enormous amounts of data and guessing what the response is rather than actually understanding. It's the AI car crash problem. They don't crash cars like humans do, and they do it in strange ways. And the linguistic AIs can be tripped up because they don't understand, and they get tripped up because they're guessing, and they will always be tripped up because they don't have understanding. The mistakes that they make are because they don't have a human perspective and a human grounding of their own conceptual awareness. Which is what we grow up absorbing that stuff, and you need to put that inside a robot, in effect, in order to give it the communication perspective. I mean, maybe we can do it virtually, but I suspect it would be best to actually do it in a proper embodied robot. I mean, the other opportunity, and I've not pursued it, is that this kind of technology that I'm talking about would be, obviously the police are wearing body cameras, and there's a lot of conversation and human interaction. Well, if the technology that I'm talking about could be put behind that, it would it could potentially participate in the conversation of the law or the recognition of people, or just actually from the point of view of collecting data, it would be a good thing for training an AI, whether people are willing to do that sort of thing. I mean, the other source of data is obviously YouTube videos. You've got to pick your right YouTube video, obviously, but this swim lane thing of being able to recognize the perspective, with videos, you sort of swap to the point of view. You're in your sight is in the experience of a character in the within a film presentation. You get talked at as though you were someone. So in order to train an AI with from YouTube, which I think will be doable, will be something that we people should target at. I would like to target at.
I've tried training stuff with YouTube. It either goes off on a racist rant or it just talks about cats.
Yeah.
Those are the two extremes, I think.
Yeah. Well, you'd have to pick.
You have to be very careful, because whatever you do with AI, it tends to represent the data that you give it.
Yes.
Over fixation, or whatever you call it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, what I'd like, I mean, I saw somebody who's, publishing on this, and I was amused to see that they'd picked a sequence out of Pride and Prejudice, which also I thought maybe it was their favourite book. It's my favourite book just because of the complexities and the subtleties of the characters, um, of the motivation and the hidden uh, things that are being expressed. There are words that are being expressed, but yeah, I mean, the linguists, they talk about semantics and pragmatics. The pragmatics is the stuff that's between the lines of text. Actually, what is really being said, and as you can imagine, in a that it's you know 17th century society, the weight of social prejudice and the need to
Yeah,
conform.
I mean that's information that's outside the book, though, isn't it? You have to generate that information externally. You have to have lived in that society.
Oh yes, you've had to
So
as a human being.
Given the book, it wouldn't.
No.
You could
With
interpret it literally,
yes,
but
yeah,
it wouldn't actually get the subtleties.
no. So in order to get an AI to understand Jane Austen, you would have had to have trained it.
With 17th century etiquette.
Or well, I don't know how I got trained in 17th century etiquette, but
Maybe things don't change that much.
yeah.
Depends where you come from.
Yeah.
Those balls you attend at the
Yeah,
weekend.
here we take balls.
I have attended some balls, but I don't think that was actually much of an interest in. I think I attended balls later than when I was studying Pride and Prejudice as a 16-year-old for O level, because that's how old I am. Anyway, yeah, no, really love that book. Yeah,
Again, the interesting problem there is about external information.
yeah. Which that's what the HEMSEYE is for.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the rather than it's on the website, but I'll wing it if I may with another change of topic, another 5 minutes, or unless more questions.
Yeah, I was going to say the one thing, the interesting thing about the semantic primes is that there's a couple of things. One, if you open sentences and they get bigger and bigger, the actual combinations are actually quite large. So there's an awful lot. It's not surprising that you can do complicated things with it, because as the sentences increases, you get an immensely large number of possibilities.
Yes.
So as your sentences get longer and longer, the amount of information that you can actually potentially produce is massive. A lot of it probably won't make any sense whatsoever, but
No, but
it doesn't surprise me that you can do a lot with it. But there's a reason that there's a large number. You involve some large numbers.
yes, because the way that it works, the
With ideal search algorithm, you split your search down into one or more of these semantic prime sentences, but you probably end up with lots of them, and then you just do a lookup table, and then that would answer.
Yes, yeah. What the because we've talked about semantic tribes, but not the natural semantic metalanguage,
Yeah.
which is in the presentation that I given, but there's some links to it, or you can if you Griffith University in Australia, where Cliff Goddard is based, who is he started working with Anna Vizbeker. I may actually be saying her name properly. It came up with her with this natural semantic metalanguage, where what they were saying was the word this, looking at languages throughout the world for the concept of this, what are the universal sort of template type usages of this that exist in all languages, as in they in effect were seeking to find the language of thought, the pre-verbal, the language independent mechanisms of communication.
Effectively, minimum sentence is 3 anyway. You have 3 semantic primes. It's probably the minimum sentences. They've got to be bigger than that.
Yeah, no, well, yes. So I also last month I was talking of if you thought of words of being having a context and an opportunity and sort of a pluggability in that that they've got sort of a sticky front end and a sticky back end, as it were. If you visualize them as being like what are they called, Skinner boxes. If you've ever studied psychology, no, Skinner box. So this is it's recognize a context opportunity. That's what a Skinner box is about. And there was this video that showed of a rat that, given the situation of being able to recognize, it was still learning, but the situation it was in was it was in this box, and when the light was off, it could press the lever, the light would come on, and it would then get a pellet of food delivered. But the light above where the food got delivered would then come on, and they couldn't get more food until the light above where it got delivered went out, and then they could then go back to the lever, press the lever again, and get more food. So they were in a contextual opportunity. Go on. You.
I was flicking flies actually.
Oh, were you? Oh, okay.
So you misinterpreted.
Yeah. I thought you just wanted. Yeah. So in a sense, the I is in a sense like a Skinner box. Sorry, no, this is like a Skinner box in that there's a contextual opportunity. It's as though there's buttons and levers I can press where there's stuff within arm's reach. In that, I can choose to check out how crushable they are, or whether I can use them as weapons, or so. When you're modeling the physicality of the world, there are mechanisms for not done about discrete event simulation, but I want to. The way that you do it is you use these templates called simulation element templates, simulation element designers. So when I was talking about different sorts of processors and queues and so on, you would create a simulation element designer, which would be a sort of a virtual thing, in a sense, the physicality of experience of deciding to use the word this or you or whatever. We have that on our shelf of our brain, as it were, and we pull it off that shelf, and we know the plumbing of, we recognize when we need it. We know the plumbing of how to bolt stuff to the front end to it and the back end. The natural semantic meta language, which, as you say, there perhaps are only 3 different opportunities, or perhaps 5, in how you would use the word this or whatever it is, the various semantic primes. But once you've got through 10 words in a sentence, or 20 words in a sentence, by the time you got to 20 words, because it's 1 times 3, and then there's 3 again on those, the potential combinations for a 10-word sentence, it is so many million. Yeah, it's madness. Yeah, but that's based on the mathematics of it. But if you're considering the physicality and the recognition of an intent in the selection of the this, and you're relating it back as a you're using your semantic primes as, if you are old enough to remember overhead protectors and acetates, where you can have these films, clear films, that you can write stuff over the top of something else that you've labeled it. This is like the Terminator view, that you get an extra layer of, well, you have layers in image editing software. So and you can turn the layers on and off. But when you write stuff on a layer, you're in effect being able to connect that layer to the stuff that's underneath. So the difficulty that we've got in, I was talking about the earlier of this mirror line of stuff that we're wanting to connect the plumbing of the textual world, the physical world, and the virtual world, and the imagined world, simulation world. It's all part of this mind's eye, creating of a mind's eye. So we want to create a mind's eye, but the learning rate of a human child compared to an AI is humongous, because there's all this focus of mum and dad and everybody else, and there's all these objects and lovely interesting things, and the AI's grant runs out, and after 2 years of being played with a few hours a day over 2 years, it then gets archived and forgets all the stuff it's learned. Not much use to anybody. What you need is a common language of understanding. Well, I'm saying that there's already this physicality type XML based thing called BPMN and BPSIM involved in the discrete event simulation, and I still haven't described that properly to you, about how it's really good at describing time. Yeah, come back to that if I can. Hive mind's eye. Bee. Imagine a bee buzzing around the world. This is a Wi-Fi enabled bee though. The bee visits a new experience. It's not sure what to do, because it's a slightly intelligent bee. So it calls up its hive memory, because it's Wi-Fi connected to the previous life experiences of other members of its hive. So it's observing some cause and animation that is occurring, and it could recognize that animation as being like an episode of Catchphrase, where it knows the words that are being associated and described with this thing, and it knows the possible outcomes of the fact that it's a Coke can that's crushable, and you've got to be careful when you open them up because you get sprayed, and because it's seen all of this stuff before, because in the context that it's in, it's calling upon its hive mind's eye past experience, and knowing what outcomes have been observed in the past, and when it sees an outcome that is different to what has previously been experienced, it needs to upload that via Wi-Fi to the knowledge experience of the particular object that is the Coke can. Yeah. So we need an XML modeling experience of Coke cans and stuff that we could model in a similar manner in a generic kind of a way. And there's work, called NoRob and various open source stuff in the robotic operating system world, ROS, which is the dominant operating system for controlling robots. Most of the DARPA robots have used this technology, and it's about message passing and whatever. So this hive mind's eye thing is something that you would want to plug into a ROS kind of environment. Now, so I've talked about, there's this Wi-Fi enabled bee. I thought I'd talk about bees rather than termites, because we feel a lot more positive about bees than termites, but they all live in hives. Anyway, so it's buzzing back information back to its community about these new experiences that it's having, and then the bee dies. Well, what does the community do? It sends out a party of 3 bees, and they watch each other's back and try to find out what happened to the one that got squashed, or whatever happened to the bee, and they're now very cautious of the materials and the location in which this bee came to some kind of end. So it's a repository of cause and effect, and past experience, and people have said that this is like SAW, or there's a cog or something or other. There are existing architectures out there for doing this sort of thing, and I've not spent a lot of time reading about these other architectures, but when I've read about them, I've thought actually the underlying plumbing that I'm talking about, SAW having, isn't quite the same as discrete event simulation and BPMN. I think that these architectures are, been worked on for years and years, and are part of the way there. And some people have actually started plugging them together so that they're able to work together. Well, what SAW might be an opportunity of actually putting this additional semantic prime and discrete event simulation engine in, which is probably a good lead into me talking about discrete event simulation engines again now and how they model time. But before I go into that, we've got another 40 minutes left, and yeah, we need to talk about what else we might want to talk about, or what we might want to do, or next meeting as well. So any questions? People have sort of deafened into silence, and are you still with me on this? Yes, they all shout. Or are you getting tired? We could have another beer.
I'm just wondering why this would replace the World Wide Web at the moment. I mean,
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
what's the reason behind that?
Well, you see, the World Wide Web isn't a Star Trek computer, in that we have to use Google to search it. Whereas, if you could talk to the HEMSEYE that had human-like experience of the world and a human-like context and understanding of the world, you could have a conversation with it because it understood semantic primes and semantic metalanguage, which is, in a sense, can be used as the common core translatable language for all languages, and the bootstrap to acquiring any language, because it could.
Okay, so we're talking about it basically being a universal search engine.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about it being you replace the World Wide Web with an Alexa that actually understands what you want, and when you say to Alexa, blah 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 blah, Alexa comes back like the Star Trek computer and says, well, actually, what did you mean by that? Because it has the capacity for that level of human understanding to know the context of what you're talking about and the fact that you've not been very clear.
It would also be really good as like an educator, because when you're trying to research a concept, you'll find jargon or it'll be extremely hard to navigate.
Yeah.
But you could have this essentially human-like thing that understands how you learn. What are you, a visual learner, literary,
Yeah.
and would be able to pretty much match your style and teach you any
Absolutely, yes. So I mean, the things that I want, or of how it replaces the World Wide Web, is you ask it to give me a 15-minute presentation, visual presentation on what a derivatives market is, and in particular how London is important in this industry. Now, I'm not really too sure what a derivative is and whether London is important, but if you could ask a HEMSEYE that was that plumbed in, and had a conversation, I could get educated from it, and it could give me graphs, and I'd say, sorry, I don't understand that. It would go away and draw me a picture or whatever I needed, because
it wouldn't even do that, would it? It'd have to have a preconceived idea of your educational level and what you're.
Well, yeah.
So in that place, if you've been talking to it for a long while,
Yes.
it would be more effective.
No, it would. This is how.
The external data streaming then,
This is how.
Like that's where the key areas begin to lie.
Yeah.
It's not just the HEMSEYE, it's the historical data as well that can be
Yes, no,
Well,
and
when you're explaining, when you as a person are explaining to someone, you actually adapt it according to the kind of questions
Yes.
you come back with. When
Yes.
you say, I don't understand, you then change your approach.
if the HEMSEYE knew what my educational background was,
Or you've been talking to it for a while, then it would have a better stab at
yeah, well,
it would probably be a better educator than human beings, because it already knew what you've done before.
if I allowed the HEMSEYE to read my Facebook profile and my LinkedIn profile and what I'd published, it would have a fair idea as to, what my interests or my educational background was, and therefore, when it was constructing models of my view of the world, of my swim lane capacity, and what tools it needed to deploy to get me to shift from my current swim lane to the target swim lane, what I'd requested it to explain to me.
One thing, it could be even more efficient than that, like having your own personal teacher.
Yes.
Being there all the time.
Yes.
The history.
Yeah.
You got that history plus the
Yes.
database.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
data becomes more powerful than just.
Well, there's a chap who's got three, I think it's three startups on in America. Very talented guy, but very good writer, Peter Voss, who, if you don't know Medium is a very good website for thoughtful stuff on the stuff behind AI, the kind of stuff that I've been thinking about. Anyway, no, he is. In terms of his writing, he does write in a very interested in making AI ethical, but I've not managed to sort of meet minds with him on the my mission for AI, because I mean, he seems like an awfully nice chap, as was Henry VIII, until he had a bump on the head whilst jousting, and then suffered a bit of brain damage, and was ever after a more and more unpleasant tyrant. So, Henry VIII might have been the good guy to gift AI to in his younger days, when he was a very erudite and sensitive and caring and beautiful writer of stuff. But in his later days, you've got to watch your back with him, because shit happens to people. And so,
That's thinking of an idea. It's that whole bear with me. The whole thing about having a database would be quite, I don't want to say cumbersome to have with it, but I thought of a way that potentially might work. You know how you were saying the semantic primes?
Mhm.
Put that on the shelf for a second. If you were to have that for, if you're describing something, you always try and use an analogy. At least I always do. Because if you're explaining a very complex subject, you want to use building blocks that they know already.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just kind of like throwing it there. So if you have a kind of semantic primes for what most people would know, kind of like, oh, this is my concept of what a bottle is, and this is my concept of what a chair is, and explain what an office is this kind of semantic based on what the base semantics are of
Yes.
the actual objects. Do you know kind of where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
If you kind of form that into an analogy based on that type of.
But there's some further work that they've done called semantic templates, which is where they combine the semantic primes are the atoms, and the semantic molecules are the things like, man and hand and whatever. So these are things that you can describe with semantic primes, but if you were going to build a house, you found the bricks, but you needed a mortar, so you need the molecules and the atoms, as it were, in this language, but then they're able to describe classes of things, which is I think what you're referring to. I've not studied the semantic templates quite so much because I mean I'd love to read this stuff, but I don't have university access, and the well, I say like the semantic, natural semantic meta-language stuff is in 2 journals that each cost £100. So I've not bought those, but the template stuff I think is I think might be what you're hinting at.
I'm kind of more talking about using, maybe, I think I was overcomplicating it slightly, but maybe just using semantic primes as to make analogies in order to explain things.
Your lowest level language.
Yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
taught the humans semantic primes and they all agreed on this semantic prime, you have a universal language.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I mean,
we
the
already have that already, kind of thing, I guess.
Well, Google
Be able to,
Google's translator was coming up with its own universal language, and I they don't, people don't seem to know about this work in Australia that is, I'm such a fan of what they've done.
I mean, another interesting area of something like the semantic primes is making things disambiguous, like legal systems and stuff like that.
Yes.
If you reduce it to the semantic primes, then you've got no leeway.
Yes. Yeah.
Unless you start using templates and.
Yes.
But
So
it'd be a way of classification of legal systems and
Well,
things like that.
the way I was going with the templates was that if you consider templates as being that they're being aliases of templates,
Yeah.
in effect,
That's all, yeah.
that are, or subtle aliases, an alias that has a particular bent in another direction. You could, as you were describing, you could choose your alias for a particular say person because their sensory experience was suited to thinking in a visual or a numerical or a whatever type world. Yeah, so absolutely, yeah. Great. Well, we've got half an hour to go. Well, thank you very much for coming, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself so far, and well, I think I'll continue to. So I hope you all come back. 2 of you have, and others said that they were going to. I guess they.
Not all we do.
No, it's stuff comes up in work or whatever. So there were some other enthusiastic people previously.
Are you on Meetup?
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't get an email. The only reason I knew about it, you sent us an email about the USB stick.
Aren't you on?
I'm on Meetup. I might not subscribe to the Meetup for this one, but I am on Meetup. So
Yeah, no, I'll show you later, or we'll.
I'll look it up here. Brighton.
Okay.
I just wondered that's all.
Yeah, no. Well, if you look at in the.
I looked at the skiff.
Yeah, no, I talked to the Skiff a year ago, and they wanted to charge me £35 a month to go and run Brighton-based AI meetings, and I said no. Would have been nice, but anyway, eventually there's a lady here from Barclays who sent me an email and said, "Would you like to come and do some stuff here?" And I thought, bloody wonderful, what nice people. Anyway,
Just a question: are you thinking of maybe doing some kind of workshop-based thing, maybe some coding or something?
Ah, right. Yeah. No, sure. I was just going back to. Yeah. No, that's worth talking about. There's a link here. IBM AI X Prize. Now, of course, there's a problem with this in that in order to apply for an IBM AI X Prize, you need $5,000. Well, there's no way I'm going to pay IBM that kind of money, and also you need to be able to fund yourself for the course of the prize as well. And I'm kind of outlined how I want to do this for free, and give it away. It's all very. I'm inspired by what's his name, the World Wide Web bloke, who did tremendous benefit. I'm trying to help the world do something tremendously beneficial and kind and good and useful. And, we've all done tremendously well out of Tim Berners-Lee and his work on the World Wide Web. Well, I think, maybe starting to dawn on the idea that this might be, a route up the Everest that is AI. I talked about this last month about how technologically we are in the foothills of Everest, looking up at the summit and thinking, yeah, we'll probably do that. What's the route? What should we take? What technology should we have? And it's got to be within grasp. And there are teams all around the world who are discussing this, and some of them are going off at a tangent and totally wasting their time. And some of them may even get killed. Perhaps, I don't know. Perhaps if you, because there are people who are wanting to do lethal autonomous weapons, which we haven't talked about. So, is anybody going to pay me something that's a great deal more than PhD wages? Because I'm not doing that. There aren't any within the UK. The people who are running the AI research is the Turing Institute. Well, I have to get about there aren't people in the Turing group of universities that are into comprehending this stuff. There's a guy in Edinburgh who has written something about. I'll have to write up about him. I was thinking. Sorry, you're talking about way to go with this. What I want to do is I want to. I don't want these ideas to die with me. This shit's just in my head, and I want to unload it and have fun and enjoy sharing it. And if I could get this invented and earn a living at it by giving it away for free, which chances are I haven't got a PhD. The people who are running the Turing stuff and at Google, I've spoken to Google, and the people, they're bottom-up people in the main who are interested in maths. And if you can't write an equation for it, they're not. It's not in their mindset. If they would stop long enough to listen to this, of the fact that this is in a sense, a philosophical, visual, top-down understanding of pulling together lots of different stuff that you can describe mathematically. This is the solution to the problem. It's not one university department. It's pulling together 5 that are willing to step out of where they can publish journals, papers into journals, which is the academic currency. This is a weakness of academics, that they are siloed. I don't know about that. I'm sorry, I can't help you. And no, I don't want to collaborate with you because I need my papers published. And if I'm one of 5 people on a paper, the currency in academia is if you're the first person on the paper, or the last person, or there's some kudos for being the person in the middle. But if you're getting asking people to spend time with their risky careers, where they're needing to get another 2 years worth of grant money because they've managed to produce research papers, they have to have them either as the name at the front or the name at the back. The name at the back means that you're the godfather, the director who nurtured this young and junior individual. You've got 5 names on it because they've come from, well, in this place, it would be that, you know, I don't know, where would you publish this kind of stuff? You know, the proceedings of the National Academy American Science, PNAS, you know, they might be, but they're quite biological in their emphasis. Computational linguistics, I've approached, I can't remember what they're called now. There's a company in Brighton that was run by a chap who died recently, who, yeah, interesting chap. There's some sense eval. He invented sense evaluation, and you know, it was taken over or renamed. You know, by it's run by an American linguistics society. Sorry,
70 curve, is it?
I can't remember. No. Anyway,
Or in New England House.
right.
Was it? No,
Anyway, the bright this chap who you know decided that we need this international conference. I mean, things to do. I'd like to start an international conference on this stuff and start getting, you know, Cliff Goddard and Bisbeeker's work, Anna Bisbeeker's work discussed in AI circles, because it's, you know, a massive opportunity. I mean, you've heard of Chomsky, and I was speaking to this, you know, guy who was working on the DARPA project, you know, and he was aware of Chomsky as a political person, but, you know, in the linguistics world, he had this massive thing of
60s, 70s, yeah.
yeah. No, he came up with this thing called the language acquisition device, and the universal language, universal grammar, and people haven't actually defined what the content of these things are. But I think, you know, the semantic prime blah 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 work is in fact the properties, you know, the nuts and bolts of what Chomsky was defining, which the language acquisition device is. He was saying there's some mechanism by which humans have the capacity to acquire language that they're born with. That was his suggestion. Based on the evidence of the observation of the amount of stuff that children are exposed to, there's a what they call it, poverty stimulus, something or other type concept. What they're saying is that you know, the order of subject, object, verb, which is really confusing, because actually in some languages they, instead of calling it subject, they call it actor. Yeah, in Basque apparently, very ancient language. That actually makes more sense, because the actor is the person who's doing the verb on the object. Yeah, and I don't know why, you know, a linguistic person can explain why they call it subject. Doesn't mean much to me, but actor does. You know, actor, verb, basher off stick. Yeah. Anyway, so there isn't enough data for the child to learn why that stuff happens. Well, as I described earlier, because the child has the emotional experience of I and you and action, and you know, me, and the association of those things, and the recognition of whenever that kind of stuff goes on, it happens in a certain order. Oh, right, okay. Well, I better obey the rules then. So what is it that's in the language acquisition device? It is the pre-verbal understanding of the semantic primes, giving you a personal sense of self-awareness and your capacity to recognize that self-awareness in others, which great apes can't do and we can. That's what's, you know, I'm thinking. And the Tomacello, you know, I think that's how you, well, that's not how it's spelled, I think, because he's Italian. I think that's how, yeah, there's some references to his work on how he's done experiments in observing great apes and humans, and it's this corporate, group and corporate behaviour and the social experience, and you imagine the amount of evolutionary advantage, that this capacity has given us over the great apes. That's the blue touch paper stuff that's different. So why do I think that? Well, what the answer is, and it's figuring out how to answer the right questions, ask the right questions as to what is missing in order to get to that answer. And it's what's in Chomsky's language acquisition device. So he's saying there's a stuff that must be there that's missing, and he's saying that it's acquired by genetics, that the child is born with it. People subsequently have demonstrated no, because social experience means that without social experience you're not able to acquire language.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that the converse is true.
No, it's
you need a different proof from that. You may have genetics, you may just not be exercising it.
Yes. No, I think my view is that they're both right in that we have the genetic capacity to give us the bits that the apes are missing, but if you mess things up for children and put them in a non-social situation for long enough, then people are never able to talk, because we know that that's true. So
there's a gorilla that learned sign language. He can't speak or anything like that.
No.
He doesn't have the larynx to do it.
Yes.
He understands how to say things. He can ask his keeper for particular things. He can even ask for his favorite meal and things like that. But he understands the concept.
Yes. No, he can understand the concept of.
His name escapes me also.
Yeah, but actually, they don't do.
It's not inherent to them.
No.
Not all gorillas can do it.
It's like pattern recognition. I think there's some monkeys that know how to use money now. They understand that if they have some money, some shady broker or trader will give them something.
Yeah.
The question is, how much more than that do we know, if anything?
The genetic difference between us and chimpanzees is like, what, 0.01?
Yeah, well, what this Tomacello chap did, and he's got lots of books about it, and there's a list of, I mean, I've not read his book, I've read it on Wikipedia, which an academic would now go sort of, or kind of, this is the reaction, but I don't have access to the proper stuff, and if someone would allow me to, that would be really nice. Maybe they'll eventually watch this on YouTube and grant me some ability that I can do this stuff, and I could be more helpful. So yeah, no, he is in the work that is referenced on Wikipedia. There's a description of blah 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 of experiments that he's done that say that we have a peg above. Whilst they do have those abilities, I think that if the way that they interact, they're inconsistent in their use of grammar.
Yeah, it's they did some studies on it. You might find this interesting as well, because I did some study on dyslexia. This is a quick tangent, but if you go on a brain training thing, and one of the main ones is see how many numbers you can remember where they are in a row.
Oh yeah, the apes are brilliant.
Yeah, the apes are brilliant because their visual part is way bigger than ours. But the thing is, it's kind of like we had a trade-off when we evolved. We kind of went more on the verbal side, so we sacrificed our visual stuff a little bit in order to have the verbal stuff.
Right.
And that relates to dyslexia a bit as well, because there's like a brain bridge between the left and right.
Yeah.
It's similar between different parts of the brain, where the visual and the language center and the auditory all have to work together. And with dyslexia, there's a little, the gaps isn't quite just so. It's a bit off. and that's why they say dyslexia is
Yeah.
the way it is.
As just a bit of an interruption to might actually encourage you to say some more. I'm dyslexic, which if you read some of my website, you may not be too surprised about. I've also got something called Mears-Erland syndrome, which is an associated condition of dyslexics, which not everybody has, and it's not. People are slagged it off because they can't actually understand the underlying mechanics of it, because they can't diagnose it. Because you can quiz a 6-year-old, and they'll say anything in order to please mummy, pretty much. They can't test it. But I'm one of those people which, depending on light conditions, my vision is altered. In terms of being able to read, most people are able to look at a word and see the entire word, and it drops into their head, as it were. Now, I can't do that. What I have to do is I have to scan backwards and forwards from the front. And the trouble is, because as a dyslexic, my amount of RAM is low, as it were. I have to scan backwards, because by the time I have a scan forwards, I've forgotten what was at the front, so I flick backwards and forwards. This is why I read slowly. And why reading sends me to sleep. And it's intensive. Now, if it's reckoned that this Mears-Erland is because of a difference in the speed of the rate at which different coloured lights manage to get transmitted to the back of the brain. So if you imagine, this stuff arriving in different times, as it were, out of phase. This is why tinted glasses work, because I need to get back to. There's one clinic that does these tinted glasses on the NHS, and I did have some, and they were. It was an awesome experience. In the tinted glasses, it was like having my brain connected to a turbocharger, because all of a sudden I could see whole words. Yeah, because this out of phaseness had disappeared, this is one of. There are multiple causes of dyslexia. It's a group of conditions, I think, in that it's possible to create a dyslexic by stabbing somebody in the head in the right place. Because it's in effect an unusual brain condition. It's a brain damage in effect. But you end up, as with deaf people who end up tuning pianos, you have this unnatural, perhaps crab-like arm or whatever if you were playing a particular sport. Which is why perhaps I'm able to think about this weird shit that other people have not managed to think of, because I'm dyslexic, and they think differently, and I know I do. When I worked in teams of people, doing modelling exercises, and I can spot stuff that no one else has been able to spot.
Because they're thinking words, not the kind of
I don't
internal
know.
words.
My plumbing is weird, but it's all right. I can't.
Steve Jobs is dyslexic as well.
Is he? Yeah.
There's like a whole lot of really high up business people that are dyslexic.
Right. Yes.
It's like,
Yeah. No, I have my. Hi, Chrissy.
Hiya.
Hello there.
Just hearing how you getting on.
Oh, well, you could have tuned into YouTube. It's going really well, and I have an alarm set on my phone for 9:30 when I was going to call things off, and we were going to stop, but.
Fantastic. Okay, well,
Yeah, no. We'll be wrapping it up in 5. We're all right. And we need to figure out what we can do in the last 5 minutes. As to anyway, thank you. Thank you. Cheers. Bye. That's Chrissy, the very nice lady who emailed me to say, "Do you want to hold a meet-up at Barclays?" Like hell, I do. Yes. If your hand was here, I would bite it off. Anyway, so we have 5 minutes. She's on her way to lock up. Yeah, so fascinating topic, dyslexia and how the brain works and stuff and how people are different. I mean, I've got some abilities that are weird and, people think I'm strange, but, and then there's the other stuff that you really don't want me to be doing, like your filing. I'll make a bloody mess of that.
Like doing that, getting one thing going around the other way. And the other
there's just something I really, some problems just, don't give it to James. It's going to be messy.
I know what you mean as well.
Are you dyslexic? Right. Okay. We'll have to.
So as you say, it's a different kind of band.
Yeah. But if you can find your particular thing that you can do, that you can be given the time to focus on in a team, you can be very positive in what you can contribute, because you've got unusual weirdness. Yeah. Right. Okay. So, what do people want to do? We didn't actually talk about DARPA. There's loads of links on the website, and if you look at my website and think about how could it be made more explainable. Now, what I'd like to do is there's something about I talked about simultaneous localization and mapping, SLAM. There's a new technology which is a mechanism of producing very lightweight data, sort of summary data of edges of objects. So if you put it on a robot and you get the robot to shake its head, it then recognizes every object that's in the room by its edges because of the variation in the background relative. It can tell whether or not stuff is becoming darker or lighter. So when you look at the videos of what this stuff does, it labels stuff as either green or red based on whether contrast is increasing or decreasing. And also, somehow, because the maths have not understood it, they're able to do depth perception. So you've got a three-dimensional object perception the moment you walk into a room and do that.
Is that using binocular or singular?
It's singular. Bloody brilliant.
But edge detection I can understand.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, there's a link on that about DVS. And it's a technology that's, there are a number of different companies that are working on it. And there's a company in Zurich who, I actually emailed them about it and said, can't you make a Raspberry Pi version? Cool. And his reaction was, well, we're working on the technology. We'd love to make a version for the Raspberry Pi. And that is what we're planning. But we've got some technical difficulties and we will definitely want to attempt to do it. It will be more expensive than a Raspberry Pi. But, for God's sake, something that brilliant, I'd spend, well, I'm not going to say, but, he might end up watching this and then decide to, make that price. I'll leave it,
Networking for together or something.
Yeah, well, the reason that they're good is that it gives you event information around the edge. So it just gives you the data about the objects and their depths, and none of the other pixel stuff. Now, they do have a version where you get that pixel stuff as well, so you can get the textural context within stuff. there's a whole. I'm not going to describe the video. There's a brilliant video about how this works in microseconds as opposed to milliseconds, so you don't have the strange video effects that you get with stuff freezing, when stuff happens very fast. But anyway, it's explained in that video. So there's an opportunity of using that technology, very lightweight, a few kilobytes worth of data, to identify objects, to create a HEMSEYE. Hopefully, now I want to identify objects using. There's a couple of people who've been working on stuff called, rather than, the work that people have been doing on vision, they've been throwing away the 3D-ness of it, in that, you need to understand the fact, if you were going to recognise a dog, the fact that it was a staffy as opposed to an Alsatian, what you need to know is kind of, in a sense, the sausages that you would need to inflate the topology of why is a staffy different. Now, if you look at the underneath of a staffy, and you probably never have, from looking from the front of it, of its jaw, you would expect it to have a jaw that's very triangular. Yeah, because it's, if you saw a staffy that was doing that, and you looked at its overall body and needed to guess, you think, no, that's not an Alsatian. That's probably a staffy, that is, because from the front head experience what the likely shape of this bit that you never see is actually. Now that there's a study of an area that isn't big in AI at the moment. There's a guy in Italy that I came across a paper for, and there's another guy in America where what they are doing is, in a sense, understanding the range in which you can push about and inflate the sausages, as it were, that would describe staffy versus Alsatian. Yeah, and coming up with a numerical description of it. So, as I understood from what their paper was, it was full of maths. I mean, I didn't really
a lot of that is kind of grouping things together so that you have a range of attributes.
I don't know.
Some very like 1920s, there's an attempt to recognise some flowers, and these statistical techniques obviously have to do it all by hand.
Well, what this guy was coming up with was that essentially he was hoping to come up with a hash function from the view of the abstract topology of something, which, you've got all these HEMSEYE objects off in the cloud, and your little bee there. You want the bee to have a lightweight DVS event camera that would then.
More of a binary tree than that.
Sorry.
Be more of a binary tree than a hash function.
Well, I don't know. You want some capacity.
You're querying it, and you want to get the maximum number of hits, as it were, for the attributes.
Well, you want this bee to be able to generate some capacity that's lightweight to send up to the cloud that then returns you staffy. Object staffy. This is what you need to know about staffy. Don't get too close because they can be bitey, unless they've been treated nicely, in which case they're lovely. See ya. Yeah. So yeah, no, I should shut down and say bye to everybody on Facebook. Hopefully, is there is somebody still subscribed, so maybe Stuart is still there. Bye, Stuart.
I'll probably see you next time unless I've got a job. I'm not here, I've got a job.
Oh dear.
Alright, I'll see you later.